We'll do a rogue drafting guide. Oh, what a start! What a start. Alright, this is a pretty easy Dr. Boom. Second choice would be Baron Geddon, but it really doesn't even come close to Dr. Boom. There are two legendaries that are not class legendaries that are top tier, and it's Dr. Boom and Ragnaros. Those two have a huge impact in your deck and can actually carry your arena runs. The second tier after that would be, you know, other very good legendaries, things like, let's say, like Hogger, Kel'Thuzad, Ysera, you know. But yeah, Dr. Boom, Rag, if you see those two legendaries offered, generally the right pick. Go with Dr. Boom here. Bloodcell Raider versus Burly Rockjaw Trog is what I see. Bloodcell Raider has that extra synergy with Rogue. You do have that weapon that you can build with your hero power. Also, you tend to get a lot of pirates, since you can take South Sea Deckhand in Rogue as well to get some pirate synergy. As a first pick though, would I take it over Burly? I feel like with Rogue, you want to kind of like back off on twos, since you already get things like Goblin Auto Barbers and Defias Ringleader that are class 2-drops that are pretty good. So you don't really want to, in a situation where the 4-drop and 2-drop are very similar tier list wise, you want to maybe stay away from the twos, since you don't really get like class 4s that are good. You know, Anobar Ambusher is really not that great of a card. Shredder versus Backstab. So Backstab is maybe the best rogue class card, the best common. Against a Shredder though, I think I might take Shredder. Shredder is in a tier of its own with Zombie Chow, so not on its own. It's like Shredder on top and then Zombie Chow and then everything else is below it. I think you can go either way and both are good. I'm gonna go with Shredder. Bluegill Warrior versus Cogmaster. I do enjoy small charges in Rogue. It allows you to pick things up like Cold Blood or Tinkers. Makes those two cards a lot easier to combo out. And also, just as a 2-drop, it counters a lot of just 2s anyways, like 3 2s, 2 2s. I think it's fine. Pretty easy pick here. Giblin Stalker. We don't have any spells, and it would take a lot of spells to take Cobalt Geomancer over Giblin Stalker. Very solid 2-drop. Once again, talking about like how good certain 2s are compared to other 2s. You have like things like Haunted Creeper, Giblin Stalker, Fairy Dragon, which are like premier common 2s. There's like really good like rare 2s like Knife Juggler and Wall Pyro, but these are the best. Like this is so much better than a River Croc because it gives you initiative. Your opponent's not gonna be able to remove it unless they have something like a Flame Cannon. So if your opponent has a really removal heavy hand, and this is the case when you go higher up in wins, they have a lot of cheap removal and they have bigger minions to back it up. That's the trend you see in Arena. So the higher up you go in wins, things that cannot be targeted and don't give your opponent play are very powerful. So I'll take the Giblin. So far the deck is looking pretty stellar. Here we have Oasis Snapjaw versus Venture Cove Mercenary. We do have 2 4s already. And the problem with Venture Cove is it's a bit too slow now. It's supposed to be a fast card since you're paying you're getting more stats at the cost of your future turns, but the future turns end up costing you more. And if it does get removed, it's you know, pretty much just a 5-drop. Could be any 5-drop that gets removed. It tends to do bad now. It used to be a lot better in Classic because people would actually respect it and trade in for it. But here, now in the current meta, people just kind of ignore it, and that really does hurt you. If we had more spells and maybe like weapons or weapon buffs, Venture Co would be good because then we can just use the Venture Co as our board presence and then use spells to help protect it. That's not really the case with this deck. I think I'm gonna go with the Oasis Snapjaw over Venture Co just for a little bit more consistency. Pretty easy Eviscerate pick. The other two are not that good, so we won't talk about it. Earthen Ring versus Cultmaster versus Venture Co. Here I'm looking at Earthen versus Cult. Do we need card draw? It's a question. We don't really have any like draw synergy yet. Bluegill Warrior does work really well with Cultmaster, since you can just draw immediately if you have the Cultmaster on board. Same with the Shredder, it does stick on board. Earthen Ring works with Rogue really well too. I mean, you need heals as rogue. I think I'm gonna go with the Earthen here though. It'll be our first 3-drop. And if we're gonna use Cult Master as a late game card, I'd rather get like bigger minions. Like currently we don't really survive Flame Strike that well. Take the Giblin. Shiv is probably one of the like deceptively worse cards in Rogue. It's you can compare it to like Fan of Knives. At least Fan of Knives does like an AoE clear. It's actually a lot worse than Fan of Knives though. It turns out that you don't really have a lot of situations that you want a hero power for 2 mana to deal 1 damage and you want Shiv. So it kind of like is worse hero power in a way. Really bad for tempo. Take the Giblin. One-Eyed Cheat versus Headcrack versus Young Priestess. I don't mind getting 1-drops in Rogue since you get to combo out a lot easier if you have really cheap cards. Maybe that's the right way to go. If we did take the Blood Sail, maybe a One-Eyed Cheat would be okay here. I'll take the Young Priestess. Generally, they'll both trade with 2-drops. The One-Eyed Cheat a little bit slower though, since it costs 2. And if you do face like a 2-3 with the Young Priestess, you have your hero power, which does stick on the board after the first attack, so it's not that much of a minus tempo. It's good for getting initiative. All 1-drops are. Fairy Dragon versus Stone Spinner Trog. So we talked about Fairy Dragon and Giblin being really good because they don't offer counterplay. But there's also I would imagine that you would want like half your 2-drops to be 2-3s and the other half being 3-2s, because depending on the matchup, 2-3s are better or 3-2s could be better. So it depends on what class you're playing against, and having a wide variety of cards really does help, rather than just having like top tier cards but like 5 Shredders and 5 Fairy Dragons. But currently we have 2 2-3s. I'll take the Fairy Dragon here. I think it's fine. Deadly Poison versus Earthen Ring. We already have 1 Earthen. We have 3 2-drops right now. I don't think we need the another like 2-drop-ish statted minion. Let's go with the Deadly Poison as our first weapon buff. This is a pretty easy Shredder. Won't talk about it. Sprint. So now that we see the Sprint, it's up against 2 bad 2-drops, and we have a good amount of 2s now. We have 2, 3, and then I'll count this as like 0.5, like 3.5. Want to end up with maybe 6, and we're on track to do that by the end of the draft. Not even being halfway through right now. I think we're okay taking the Sprint. Once we take the Sprint, we want to minimize the risk of skipping our entire turn with Sprint. So we got to pick up things like deadly, really cheap removal, things like Backstab, Deadly Poison, Eviscerate. Those things work really well with Sprint. Just so that you have a 2-pronged attack to your turn, which is the card draw and also some kind of removal that you can play for cheap. Elven Archer versus Unstable Ghoul. I don't mind the Elven Archer. Tiny pings would help out a lot. Increases your reach with just your hero power off the board by doubling it, because that's 2 damage. I think I'm okay with it. Once again, cheap cards, very easy to combo out. Nightblade versus Dancing Swords. I'll take the Dancing Swords. So right now, if you look at our late game, we have really high value late game cards, Sprint and Dr. Boom. So in the late game, we should be fine with cards, and we shouldn't be at like a huge card disadvantage, or we should be in a spot where we should be able to make it up. So I don't want to take a weak curve play is the thing. So we can give up a card in the early game, but get it back in the late game is the idea. Spiteful Smith has that natural synergy with the rogue hero power. Betrayal, we don't talk about this very much, but Betrayal doesn't tend to do well in Arena because you get a lot of cheap removal and also a lot of single target removal as rogue. So if you have a lot of deadlies, eviscerates, backstabs, and just generally how you play rogue, which is very controlly, especially in the early game, your opponents don't really have time to play like 3 minions, 2 minions, or let alone 3. So Betrayal doesn't tend to do that well. It's not a bad card though. Even if you just hit 1 and you could hit a target for like 4 or 5 damage, it's pretty much an eviscerate, right? But it is a very situational eviscerate. Here I'll take the Spiteful. Could add a little bit more late game to the deck. So we want strong curve plays, so we really don't really want Direwolf. Here it's between Tinkers and Fan of Knives. Looking at this deck, it looks like we're playing more of a control rogue, and we have very high quality late game cards. So I don't think we need to rush down our opponents with direct damage, which is pretty much the main use of Tinkers. You could use it as removal, but it's not that powerful, in my opinion. I think you have better removal options for 4 mana than Tinkers. So here I'll take a Fan. Slower card, but matches, fits in our deck a little bit better. Abusive Sergeant versus Shadow Step. Do we have any Shadow Step synergy? We have Elven Archer, Earthen Ring, and Dr. Boom. No, we'll take the Abusive. We don't have that many targets in our deck for Abusive. Like, we don't have like an Imp Master or a Murloc Tidehunter or Razorfen Hunter. Like, nothing that makes guys, but should make it work. Plus 2 buffs are pretty valuable, you know, in the board control game. Perdition's Blade, pretty easy pick. Won't talk about it. This is also this one's okay. So we don't have any like buffs as rogue. The only buff you do get as rogue is Cold Blood, but we don't have a Cold Blood, and we don't really want to pick this up so we can pick a Cold Blood, because Cold Blood really isn't that good. Here, I will take the Patient Assassin. We don't have any hard removal yet. No Assassinate. So just sticking on board is fine. And since we're not trying to play an aggressive deck, having this just stay AFK, just stealth for like the whole game is fine, because we win off board control and our late game, not off, you know, doing 3 damage with the Bloodfen Raptor every turn with a 2-drop. So Puddle Stomper, pretty easy pick. Hungry Dragon is shit. Spectral Knight, easy pick. War Golem, again, easy pick. Nairbar, just a card that I stay away from because I don't think it gives you any kind of board presence, and the ability is kind of really depends on your deck. It doesn't look like it would affect us too negatively. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 battle cries. It just doesn't do that much. Like, if you're behind, it'll not help you get back in the game. If you're ahead, it won't help you finish the game. Just don't see the purpose of this card. Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil. Take it here over Priestess. Now we do have some kind of buff. Once again, we have 1 charge Bluegill that'll combo with Tinker's pretty well. I think it'll do fine. Zombie Chow, pretty easy pick. One of the best neutral common cards in the game. Take it here. Anti-Keelbot, Tinkers. I'll take the Anti-Keelbot. Once again, we're playing control, so if we really don't want the burst. We talked about this earlier. We don't want the burst because we don't need it to win games. What we want is a little bit more sustainability, and Anti-Keelbot will provide that against a lot of more faster classes. Harvest Golem versus Trog. So here, this is where I would look at my curve, because these 2 cards are very good. So what do we need at our curve? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 4-drops, and 1, 2, 3-drops. So we could use another 3. We could also use another 4, but we need like 2 or 3 more 3s. 2 or 3 more 3s, so I'll take the Harvest Golem. And there's another Harvest Golem. Awesome. So that's pretty much it. Honestly, this deck looks really good. Just a quick overview. We have 1, 2, 3. I wouldn't count Elven Archer as a 1-drop. So we have 3 plays on 1 that are pretty decent. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once again, we count the Bluegill as half, 5.5, 2-drops. So we ended up being a little bit short of our mark, but that's okay as rogue, since we got the hero power that does contribute to board control even on an empty board. It sticks on the board. So that's good. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 plays on 3, I think that's very decent. Generally, you want to end up with like 4 or 5. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-drops. You want to kind of spike on 4. So most of the time with most classes, you want to have like 6 4-drops is what I noticed, and that does really well. Because that's like the turning point in the game is turn 4, and that's when you get value off like 4-drops killing 2-drops for free. Because that's where like the disparity of like stats increases a lot. It's like from turn 3 to turn 4 minions. So lacking a bit of 4s, but honestly it should be fine. I think we have a lot of different like removal options on 4 that we can use. combos with Deadly Poison, our Hero Power, Abusive Sergeant, Eviscerate. And for our late game, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 late game cards. Pretty good. No real heavy hitters except for the Dr. Boom and War Golem, and those are kind of could be a little bit difficult to play because 7 cost cards are kind of hard to combo out with a series of different cards. Like if you imagine like Boulder Fist Ogres instead, we can play 4 drops with them, or you can like Hero Power and play a 2 drop. It just tends to be a lot more flexible in that way. But looks like a very, very strong deck. One thing I would have liked is like a Backstab or maybe another Eviscerate, some more cheap removal. For most of our games, I think we will honestly just kick butt. Like if we do have a problem, it would probably be that we fall behind. I don't think we ever get outvalued with this deck. But yeah, that is the Rogue drafting tutorial. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, bye. Bye. I don't know. That's it.